So, welcome everyone. And it's hard to believe that we've probably been doing this for more than a year now because I remember we started like 2 years ago, perhaps, or a year and a half ago in Leviticus. And then we've been through the entire Torah since then. And of course, we're starting once again with Bereshit. So, welcome and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
I mean,
So, so I went back to find what I could, and we left off. It was so interesting, actually, that we went back and read actually two verses. We started with verse 2, and then I continued with the he or the he or. And Lauren actually asked me, wasn't I going to do the Rashi on on verse 2? And it wound up that we ran out of time. I said I was going to do it, that I wanted to make the point about Vayomer Elohim he or, and for those of you who might not remember, the point about Vayomer and the verb Amar is that it can mean thought, and that I absolutely love the suggestive translation of God thought, let there be light, and there was light. And I love that as opposed to said, which of course is Ledaber. Well, Daber is to speak. So, it's always translated as Hashem said. And I think Hashem thought is sort of very suggestive. So anyway, that's what happened. We started to discuss that. I wanted to get that point across, and we ran out of time. So I am going to, we'll take a look quickly at the verse again. V'ha'aretz hayta tohu vavohu. So this v, and again, the preposition v can mean, or the conjunctive v can mean and, it can also mean but. And we might be able to translate this as, but the earth was tohu vavohu. And in some ways, I think that makes in some ways more sense. Again, I think this whole writing here is extremely thick. I mean, we're talking about creation. And,
yeah, I
and
didn't remember even doing the first verse.
yeah, I'm not going back to that. That's major. That's major. I will
Yeah,
see if there's any
I
way I
remember
can
the other.
resurrect that tape. I don't know that I have it.
Yeah.
What happened was I starting on Facebook, recording it on Facebook, and then we transitioned over to YouTube and then simply recording it on my computer, which is clearly the way to go, and then transitioning it to YouTube. But at any rate, those are just details. So possibly we'll go back and do it another time. Perhaps we'll see. Maybe we'll find a different time to do it all together, or I'll just do it myself, something like that. I don't know. Although it's a lot more fun doing it with all of you. We're going to continue. So the earth was tohu vavohu. And incidentally, these two words are generally always together. They're not this when it's supposed to mean whatever it's supposed to mean here, right? So I was doing a lot of dictionary work here. Tohu, desolate, vohu, void. Rashi's going to work on those two words, but they're usually connected. So tohu vavohu is a concept. V'choshech, darkness, and darkness al pnei tehom, on the surface of the deep, the deep. And Rashi will explain what deep are we talking about here. V'ruach Elohim. And again, does the va mean and, or does the va mean but? Right? The spirit of Hashem, right? The spirit of Elohim, merachefet al pnei hamayim, hovered over the surface of the water. This is verse 2, right? Just verse 2. So, taking a look at it. Tohu vavohu. So, tohu, he says, has the connotation or the denotation of tama or temuha, something like that. Tameh with a hey. Veshim mamun. So, tama, again, these letters here refer to the Jastrow dictionary. And the Jastrow page is divided into, there's a line that goes down the middle, and the line on the part on the left is the A side, and it continues on what I would call the B side. And so 1675, it's a page number in Jastrow where I found these words. So, Tama, to be in wonder, amazement, Shimamun, astonishment, right? She'adam tohe umishtomem, albohu shebahu. So he says that these words, I'll finish the translation, I'm sorry, that an individual is amazed and confounded on the chaotic condition in it, that it was in such a chaotic condition. So what I think is so interesting is how, we could translate this or look at this verse as simply saying, that's a descriptive of the condition of the world, of the universe, or the earth at that particular moment. And Rashi is taking it into an emotional reaction. So,
But there were no people to react.
no, there were no people to react, but he's saying, were you around to see it, this is how you'd feel about it, which I think is lovely. I love, the poetry, because I think poetry, part of the purpose of poetry, I think, just like with music, is to be able to touch those parts within us that are not necessarily something that one can simply state in a using regular prose, but that it appeals and somehow can speak to deep emotional, psychological, spiritual places within us. And we would be in the state regardless. If you think, were you there, right? Were we able to imagine ourselves at creation? Which is basically, right, yesh me'ayin, creatio ex nihilo, something coming out of nothing, right? How do you describe the sort of transitional moment of something coming out of nothing? Because that is the assumption that we make in believing in God as creator, that God is capable of bringing something into existence out of nothing. And that idea of a divine existence being presupposed by anything that exists in this world. Our ability to even have cognition is only there because a divine element, a transcendent element, and that's exactly what defines it as transcendent, makes it possible. And we just stop. We just assume that somehow our intelligence is something that we created in that way. But saying that God created is a way of admitting that there is something that goes beyond ourselves and our own person and our own will that brought these things into existence, and that the whole of existence somehow rests on a level of existence that transcends it. And that's, of course, I discussed this the last time when we did this with that word amar, that God thinks, etc., right? And there's that famous sort of jokey statement that the rabbi's about to bite into this delicious lekach, and he says to his students, you think I'm biting into this lekach? I'm not. I'm biting into what God thinks is this lekach.
What's a lekach?
Like a piece of cake.
Rabbi,
Yes.
if God separated the heaven and the earth and made the sky and the earth, what is this great light that he made? It's not the sun. It must be so bright that the people that he think that he said, well, I can't do this. This light is too bright. The whole world will see it, and they'll get scared. So
Can we wait till we get
Okay,
there?
yeah, right. Yeah, Harlan,
not the sun, though, is it?
okay,
It's
no,
not
it's
the sun.
not.
We're not
It's
at the
not.
lights
No.
yet.
No, that's right. And we will, God willing, we'll get to it between today and tomorrow. Okay, but you're right. I think you have some recollection of some of the midrashic material involved in it, but let's keep going on what we're on. Thanks.
The idea of thought
Yes.
changes the Vayomer Adonai El Moshe Lemor.
Yeah.
That God thought it to Moses, who said it.
Yes, to say it. Yeah. I mean, in some
That
ways, it
does
definitely
change it a little bit. It's
right.
Yeah.
Tries to describe in a different way divine communication. Yes, I agree. Let's get back into this. All right. So let's see what we're saying. Okay, we're just here right now. Tohu. So he translates tohu with this French word. By the way, there's no Yiddish here, right? Very often there's a Yiddish word that translates it. But at any rate, he says estourdissant, right? Which sounds awfully like astonishment. And I don't know. Disons, dear, to speak. I don't know. I'm just not good at medieval French. I'm not particularly good at modern French, but I have a little bit of a background. So he says, of course, that's in French. Bohu. So he says this word bohu is lashon reikut. It is. Forgive me. I'm gonna mute a second. So that the word bohu lashon reikut, it connotes void, utsdu, which is desolation. And I'm not sure exactly what this particular, is this another French word that he's got? I'm not sure. Okay, what this abbreviation stands for. But lashon reikut utsdu, so reikut is emptiness and desolation. So
What is it? Do we know where he got this from? Where he got these interpretations from? Just because I'm so, I've never seen something like tohu coming from tamua. Where did the mem go?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean he's not saying it's necessarily related to the word that I don't think he's saying that. I mean that doesn't answer your question. I am not, I'm pretty certain that Rashi, of course, learns it from his teachers, right?
Right.
And sometimes he quotes his teachers, but I could look at Siftei.
He's not
Okay.
trying to say that it comes from the same shorish, I guess.
No, I don't
because
think he is.
a mem
No.
wouldn't just disappear like that. Okay.
Of course, although mems can get elided. A mem can definitely get elided. I can't give you an example right this second. I did look at Siftei Chachamim, but I don't recollect anything there. And I can look at Siftei Chachamim right now and see what he has to say about that. Give me a moment if I can find it quickly. Here we are. Okay.
Rabbi, what's the word firmament means? Out of the firmament came the whole world.
Say that about.
Firmament.
I'm not sure what.
I don't know. I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Are you talking about
Firmament.
Okay. No, the firmament wasn't. God created the firmament. And Harlan, once again, you are anticipating what's going to come up. Okay, that's the rakia. So I have to be careful, because if I take up the time to explain that now, we won't be actually discussing what we really need to discuss in the order we need to discuss it. So I was turning to, thank you though. I mean, I appreciate, I think your curiosity is so well placed, etc. Okay. This is the translation of the Siftei Chachamim on this, okay? And I'm just reading the translation to you. This is from Sefaria. Desolation and empty space. It seems that Rashi, this is Siftei Chachamim now, translation. It seems that Rashi treats reikut utsadu as synonyms. Both mean desolation. Alternatively, Rashi is saying that reikut is biblical Hebrew and tzdiya is Aramaic. But this is not answering your question, Shira Beth. It does not answer your question. All right, so I don't know. I guess I have to say, at this point, I do not know where Rashi derived it from. We know some of Rashi's sources. I think, I don't think this is necessarily an example of Rashi trying to come up with originality. That's not his, his originality is in the ability to explain things in such a clear way and in such a brief way as well.
Does Tosafot have some answers?
No, so Tosafot refers to the commentary in the Talmud. All right. Sometimes there is something like that in this particular text, but not right now and not here. But once in a while, there is something called Tosafot Yeshanim in a different text that I have, not in this particular one. So I can examine that text and see if they have anything else.
Maybe it comes from Rashi's understanding of human nature and his thinking and feeling what it would be like to be there witnessing it.
Right.
And he feels that it's, nobody could possibly witness it any other way. So this kind of astonishment has to be in part of, what's happening, how. And maybe the angels were astonished as well.
Yes.
Yes. But I looked up a Étourdissement, which
Yes.
was the modern
Yes.
one, and it
Yes.
said dizzying. And then I was wondering
Really?
before if the word Astor is not exactly how it is in French, but it's a Romance language. So I was wondering if it had to do with stars, like, like dizzying, a huge array of stars that you see, or or
Yeah.
in your head when you bonked
Right.
on the head or whatever. I mean, it may or may not be.
Yeah.
But he's trying to say, yes, I think that, void is a word, null, whatever, chaos, whatever, empty, but those are just words. And he's trying to say it's way more than that. It's something that you couldn't believe, if you saw it, you would just, be dizzied with astonishment. You probably got it from Heschel.
Yes, I think though clearly even saying dizzying connects to this, but I also love the connection of both cognitive and emotive element at this particular way. That the way Rashi's teasing out the text here is to say that the Torah is describing how one might feel if one were capable of actually observing this. I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time trying to tease this out more, but I think that that's really very helpful.
Yeah, I think he's saying that the
Yeah.
emotional response
Yes.
cannot be separated from what's happening.
Correct. That's exactly what he's saying. Yes, I think that's what he's saying. Okay, let's keep going here. Al pnei tehom, on the surface of the deep. Al pnei hamayim. He fills in. He says this is a little bit missing some words, right? That when it says tehom, it means on the surface of the water, she'al haaretz, which is covering the earth. So the earth at this particular time was covered deeply with water. And I have to parenthetically and editorially say, we have to be careful not to try to compare this to our scientific understanding of how the world came into existence. That using terms such as water and stuff like that is in some ways very symbolic as well. And trying to understand this because it is poetry, I mean, we could say that Mayim means a liquid of some kind, and of course, we believe scientifically, if we wanted to go in that particular direction, that essentially the planets were all molten before they actually became solidified over the course of billions of years, okay? But I don't know that that's really where I'd necessarily want to go, because I feel that the text is primarily trying to educate us spiritually. So I'm going to leave it
So
at that.
maybe, because I've heard that water sometimes refers to Torah. So if maybe he's saying the earth is covered with water, and then later he lifts some of it up, he separates and lifts some of it up into the heavens, and then there's Torah in the heavens and in earth.
So I'm going to go in a different direction. I will tell you that I think that there is very strong, this is on the basis of having studied this a few times, and to understand water as representative of divine justice. And if that is the case, the fact that we're using Elohim here in this text as opposed to Adonai, and the fact that Elohim is understood traditionally as referring to divine justice, that would make total sense. In other words, it would be consistent with the fact that we're using Elohim here, and that the water we're talking about here is the sense, the way in which water is actually an articulation of divine justice, and when we get to the Rakia, I will explain that. In terms of those things, it starts to make sense in terms of Noah and the flood. All that kind of thing starts to fit together very, very well if we understand water as representing divine justice, as opposed to but it's also, remember, justice isn't only about punishment, it's also about reward. And water is definitely one of those things that both is a reward and a punishment.
It's also based on understanding right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so
True.
in
Very
that
good.
sense, it's not separable from Torah.
Yeah,
Because our version of justice is, all spelled out in Torah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, of course, you're absolutely right that water and Torah are considered synonymous. But I'm saying in this particular context, focusing on the divine justice element of it, okay, is helpful. I mean,
What
I
is,
could, okay, let me
what
just
is
say one other thing. Sorry, let me say one more thing. That as I've started to understand that Hashem, the Yud He Vav He, represents God's existence. At least this is one understanding that I've started to gain over this. That represents the existence of God, regardless of human cognition or not. Okay, that there's a level in which God is the ultimate existent one, and the reason why we say Eloheinu, right, our God, is that the Elohim part is that element of the divine that we as human beings can understand and relate to. And
is Elohim? Does
sorry,
Elohim mean deity? Does Elohim mean
Elohim
deity?
means, we translate Elohim as God. That's how we
Oh,
translate, or
well, how
gods.
come the pagans also translate that
Say that
too?
again.
The pagans, the people that worship other gods, call it deity too. They call it
Yeah.
Elohim too.
Okay, yeah, it's true because it has to do with how you relate to it. In other words,
Oh,
do you make it your God or do you not make it your God? Do you make
oh,
Hashem your God or do you make idols your God? It
oh.
has to do with how the importance you place on it, specifically the ultimate importance you place on it. So that is the very nature of idolatry. The very nature of idolatry is giving ultimate importance to something other than Hashem. Okay,
Oh.
let's keep going. I haven't even finished this verse yet. Okay, all right. So Veruach Elohim merachefet, right? And a spirit of Hashem, or but the spirit of Hashem, hovers. And he describes it in this beautiful way. Kisei hakavod, the throne of glory. Now, we need to pull this apart a little bit, okay? So a throne represents divine, it has to do with sovereignty, and the reason why it's a throne has to do with permanence and stability. Right, so that's what a throne. I don't know what I just did here. That's where a throne, the symbolism of a throne, and kavod, glory, represents divine presence. It's a synonym for the divine presence. So in other words, that the presence of, despite, look at the contrast, right? We've got this unbelievable sort of jumble of stuff of matter coming into existence, right? And at the same time, there is the sense of the divine presence, right? And sovereignty. And the sovereignty has to do with control, right? And justice, etc. So, Omed Ba'avir, it stands in the air, Umerachef, and hovers over the surface of the water. And again, if water refers to justice, the connection of water to the divine throne makes sense, right? Okay, so but let's keep going with this Rashi, right? Beruach piv, in the breath of the mouth shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu, of the Holy One, blessed be He. And again, I would have to say, what do we mean when we say Ruach Piv, right? So we know that either Ruach means spirit or wind, but we're talking about something that is spiritual and non-substantial or relatively insubstantial. Right? So we're saying, I think if I were to try and put this all together, I would say that there is this deep sense of divine guidance, justice, presence here all the way, maybe to say the word pervading is wrong because it's saying it's hovering over the surface. So it's not identifiable, but it's somehow very present there in this way. Amrat. Okay, but so we've got to go with another word, right? That it's by the spirit of the mouth of the Holy One, blessed be He, uva ma'amaro, and with his, again, ma'amaro. Ma'amar is a word, a statement, or thought, not usually used in that sense at all. Usually ma'amar is a spoken statement. Okay, and look at the description here. Keyona, like a dove, hamerachefet al hakain, that is hovering over its nest. And there we've got av kuv teir or something, right? So again, trying to pull out and tease out what this is talking about. What is this metaphor? What's it trying to get across, right? A dove, right? You think of a dove as being something we know, of course, sort of a universal symbol of peace, right? And I think there is that sense, right? We know of the dove from the story of Noah, right? That the world is back in shape again. Okay, hovering over its nest. Well, what's that saying? What's that saying?
Protecting,
Say that again.
protecting.
Right,
It's,
and caring,
yeah, and
deeply
that's how peace
caring.
happens. Peace
Yes,
happens through protection and through
and
feeling
caring.
protected and
Right.
cared. Yeah,
Yeah.
for.
Right. And to describe God in this way is such a beautiful, way to describe God's relationship to the birth of the world, right? Which is the nest. The nest is the place where the hatchlings, where the eggs hatch into hatchlings, right? And they require such care and such nurturing at this particular point because basically the world is helpless at this point. It isn't in operation, right? This is all before God does the very first act, which of course is Yehi Or. There we go. Vayomer Elohim Yehi Or. Elohim thought or said, let there be light, Vahi Or, and there was light. So we've gotten through one verse of Rashi, and we've gotten through 2 verses of Torah here. It's just so dense. It is incredibly dense stuff. So I'm wondering whether I should go on. I've got like 3 minutes. All right, let's go on a little bit. Vayar Elohim. Elohim, this is from the verb ra'ah. God saw et ha'or, the light, ki tov, how good it was. So if we were to try and just put this in straightforward English, God saw how good the light was, which I think is, and I would have to give credit to my teacher who taught me this back in seminary, Rabbi Hanan Brichto, who translated it that way. He didn't like the translation, God saw that the light was good. He didn't like that. He didn't think that was real English. And he translated it as God saw how good the light was. Vayavdel. So look at the connection. God saw how good the light was. Vayavdel Elohim. The response is God separated Bein Haor, between the light, Uvein HaChoshech, and between the darkness. And of course, we have to get into, and hopefully tomorrow we will expand a little bit on Harlan's question about what light are we talking about, since the luminaries were only created on the 4th day. And this is the first day. And I think I will stop here, and we will mark it for Rashi for tomorrow, God willing, right over here. And I'm going to stop the share. Okay. All right. So, look at this. I'm lopsided. Didn't even see. Okay. Any thoughts before I stop the recording?
I was just thinking how in that last Rashi, he's got 3 very different metaphors for what's going on. Now, he's got a throne hovering in the air. He's got breath, the breath of breathing or of speaking, or of both breathing and speaking. And then he's got the bird over the nest, and it's like he's overwhelmed. He can't say enough.
Right.
Because it's too difficult.
And
Well,
the major
only thing
takeaway is how emotional this all is. It isn't simply something you can think of, right, in a rational way. It's all mixed up with how emotional a moment this is. Harlan, you were going to say?
I would say that the scientists are different. This is a morality. This is not science. This is a morality of us, for praying, and it's wonderful.
Yes, it is. And I'm going to stop the recording.